The unexpected request. The stars outside the window of the Galactic ship twinkled like distant fireflies. A soft hum filled the air as the alien widow, Lyra, sat in her seat, staring at the vastness of space. Her heart beat a little faster than usual. She didn't understand why she was here. Why did the Galactic Council call her? She didn't want to be part of any of this. Lyra. A cold, metallic voice interrupted her thoughts. You are requested to appear before the council. She felt a shiver down her spine. The council, the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Lyra knew that whatever they wanted, it would not be good for her. She stood up slowly, adjusting her long, dark robes. She had lost everything in the war. Her home, her family, and now her future was in the hands of strangers. As she walked through the corridors of the ship, the silence weighed on her shoulders. What could they want with her? The large doors of the council room opened before her, and she stepped inside. A long, oval table stretched across the room, its surface glowing, faintly. Around the table sat several council members, each more imposing than the last, their eyes bright with the light of distant stars locked onto her as she entered. Sit, Lyra, one of them said, a tall alien with purple skin and golden eyes. She obeyed, taking the seat across from him. Her hands clenched tightly in her lap. The leader of the council, a being known only as Jar, leaned forward, his expression unreadable. We have a matter of great importance to discuss, he began. His voice echoed in the cold room. Your people, the Zarna, have broken galactic law, and the punishment for such an offense is severe. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. She had heard rumors about her people's downfall, but she never imagined she'd be part of it. What? What punishment? She whispered, though she feared she already knew the answer. Jar's eyes narrowed. Your people have lost their right to govern themselves, and you, Lyra, are the last of your kind. He paused, letting the words sink in. But there is a way to avoid the full consequences. There is a way to save what little is left of your people. Lyra stared at him, not understanding. How? She asked, her voice shaky. The council leader leaned back, folding his arms. You are the widow of a Zarnan general. You know the laws of our galaxy. According to galactic law, you are required to marry again to keep your bloodline alive. Lyra's eyes widened. Marry again? She asked, her voice rising. But I don't want to remarry. My husband is dead. He died in the war. The pain of losing him was still fresh, a wound that would never heal. The thought of marrying another man, of giving herself to someone else, felt impossible. Jar's gaze softened, but his voice remained firm. The law does not care about your personal feelings, Lyra. If you do not marry within 3 days, your people will be lost forever. And so will you. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. 3 days. 3 days to find a new husband. But it wasn't just any husband. The galactic law required her to marry a human. A human. Her mind struggled to comprehend it. Humans were primitive, wild and unrefined compared to the great civilizations of the galaxy. How could they possibly understand her, let alone be worthy of her? But the law was clear. Only a human could save her. You must find a human and marry him, Jar said, his voice leaving no room for argument. This is the only way to save your bloodline and avoid the full punishment of galactic law. Lyra felt like the room was closing in around her. But why a human? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. The council leader didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced at the other members who nodded. It is the will of the galaxy, he finally said. Humans are rare. They are unique. And their bond with you will bring balance. You will be their bride, and they will be your protector. Lyra's head spun. She had so many questions, so many fears. But there was no time to waste. If she didn't marry within 3 days, everything would be lost. Her people, her future, her chance at freedom. The door to the council room opened behind her, and a soft voice broke the silence. You'll be given a list of suitable humans, the voice said. Find one and marry him, or face the consequences. Lyra stood up shakily. She couldn't believe this was happening. Marrying a human. She didn't even know where to start. But there was no choice. She had no time to waste. The weight of the galaxy seemed to press down on her shoulders. As she left the council room, the door closing behind her with a heavy thud, Lyra felt the weight of the decision ahead of her. 3 days. 3 days to find a husband. And the worst part? She didn't know if she could trust a human, let alone marry one. The countdown had begun. Searching for a husband, Lyra stood at the edge of the bustling spaceport, her eyes scanning the crowd of humans. She had never been to Earth before, and the sight of so many strange faces made her stomach churn. Humans were unpredictable, chaotic, and unlike anything she had ever known. But now, they were her only hope. 3 days. The clock was ticking, and her future depended on finding a human willing to marry her. She could still feel the weight of the Galactic Council's cold stare as they gave her the impossible task. Find a human, they had said. Marry him, or your people will cease to exist. Lyra's mind raced. She had never even thought about marrying again, let alone a human. What kind of man would be able to handle her? She was a widow, a warrior's wife, and her people had fallen in battle. She had known loss, pain, and suffering. Now her very survival was at the mercy of someone she couldn't even begin to understand. Her boots clicked against the hard concrete floor as she walked deeper into the spaceport, her long robes flowing behind her. She pulled her hood tighter over her head, not wanting to attract too much attention. She had a mission to complete, and she didn't need any distractions. But the more she observed the humans around her, the more out of place she felt. Their bright eyes, the way they smiled at one another, the easy way they moved, it was all so alien to her. I need a husband, she whispered to herself, trying to make sense of it. But how could she approach someone, anyone, and ask them to marry her? What kind of man would want to marry a woman he didn't know, someone who was so different from him in every way? The idea seemed impossible. As Lyra wandered through the crowded spaceport, she couldn't help but notice how different humans were from her people. They wore simple clothes, moved with casual ease, and laughed without worry. In contrast, her people were proud warriors, always on guard, always ready for the next battle. They never had time for such things as love or joy. But now here she was desperately searching for someone to call her husband. She walked past a group of young men laughing over a holographic game, but they barely glanced at her, too absorbed in their own world to notice her presence. Her heart sank. Was she really going to find someone who would want her, someone who could save her people? Then something caught her eye. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and intense eyes, was standing near the entrance to the terminal. He seemed different from the others. There was an aura about him, a quiet confidence that set him apart. He wasn't laughing with the others, nor was he distracted by anything else. His focus was sharp, his gaze sweeping the crowd as if he was looking for something, or someone. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Was this it? Was this the man she had been waiting for? The one who could save her? She hesitated, watching him for a moment longer. She didn't know why, but there was something about him that pulled her in, something that felt right. As if fate had brought her here to this very moment. The urgency of her mission pushed her forward, and before she knew it, Lyra found herself walking toward him. But just as she was about to speak, something unexpected happened. The man turned, his gaze locking with hers, and for a moment the world seemed to stop. His expression was unreadable, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Curiosity, confusion, maybe even a bit of wariness. Lyra felt a strange tug in her chest. This was the moment. This man was the one who could change everything. He was her last chance. But the words she needed to say, how could she possibly ask him to marry her? Before she could speak, the man spoke first. Are you lost? His voice was deep, calm, and surprisingly warm. Lyra blinked, taken aback. He was speaking to her. But why? She looked down at her feet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. No. She replied slowly, trying to steady her nerves. I'm looking for someone. The man raised an eyebrow. Someone? He repeated, his tone both curious and cautious. What kind of someone? Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her mission pressing down on her once again. She could feel the eyes of the crowd on her, and the pressure was mounting. But there was no turning back now. She had to do this. She had no choice. I need a husband, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She winced as soon as the words left her mouth, realizing how strange they must sound. She had never said anything like this to anyone before. She had never needed anyone before. The man's eyes narrowed. There was a brief pause as he studied her, his expression hard to read. A husband? He repeated, his voice low. Are you serious? Lyra felt the heat rise in her cheeks. Of course he would think she was crazy. No human would agree to such a thing, but she had to try. The fate of her people depended on it. She stepped closer, her eyes locking with his. I'm serious, she said firmly. I don't have much time. The Galactic Council, they've given me 3 days to marry. If I don't, my people will be lost forever. The man's expression changed then. It was subtle, but Lyra caught it, a flicker of recognition. Wait a second, you're not from around here, are you? Lyra swallowed hard, her heart pounding. She had to convince him. No, I'm not. I'm from another world. And I don't know who else to turn to. There was a long pause as the man looked at her, his eyes studying her face as if trying to determine if she was telling the truth. Lyra held her breath, praying that he would believe her. But then, just as quickly as he had softened, his face hardened again. This is insane, he muttered, shaking his head. I don't even know you. You could be anyone. Lyra's heart sank. She had come so close, and now it was slipping through her fingers. Please, she begged, her voice pleading. I don't have time. I have 3 days. If you help me, I can save my people, please. The man took a step back, running a hand through his dark hair as he seemed to process what she had said. His mind was working fast, weighing the situation. And Lyra knew that time was running out. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the man looked at her, his eyes serious. All right, he said slowly. I'll help you. But this isn't going to be easy. And I'm not doing this just because you say you need me. If I'm going to marry you, I need to know why. I need to understand what's really going on. Lyra nodded, relief flooding through her. I'll tell you everything, she promised. Just give me a chance. As they began to walk away from the crowd, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that this man might just be the answer to everything she had feared. But something told her that their journey was only beginning, and the true challenge had only just started. The price of the promise. Lyra's heart raced as she walked beside the human. His stride was long, purposeful, and it made her feel small, despite her imposing height and regal demeanor. She had never been this close to a human before. The sensation of his presence was almost too overwhelming, too real, too raw. The weight of her decision hung heavy between them. You sure about this? The man asked, his voice steady but edged with skepticism. He was glancing at her from time to time, clearly assessing her every move. His eyes were sharp, intelligent, yet there was something behind them that suggested uncertainty. Lyra had expected him to ask this question, but it still unsettled her. I wouldn't ask you if I wasn't sure, Lyra replied, her voice steady despite the chaos of her thoughts. I have no choice. My people are at the mercy of galactic law. If I don't marry, if I don't find someone willing to do this, everything will be destroyed. The human stopped abruptly, causing Lyra to take an unintentional step forward. He turned to face her, his expression serious, bordering on intense. And you think I'm the one to save you? His voice held no mockery, but there was a fire in his eyes that made Lyra's pulse quicken. Lyra met his gaze, unwavering. I don't think you're the one. I know you're the only one. His eyes softened just slightly at her words. There was a flicker of something in them, a mixture of curiosity, concern, and compassion. She could tell he was no stranger to tough situations. But would that be enough? She couldn't be sure. He had agreed to help, but for all she knew, he might walk away at any moment. He let out a deep breath, almost like a sigh, as he ran a hand through his hair. All right, he muttered, turning away as if contemplating what was to come. But you owe me an explanation. Everything. This isn't a small thing. You don't just ask someone to marry you out of the blue, not even for a galactic law. Lyra nodded, and they continued walking through the spaceport, the soft hum of ships and chatter from other travelers fading into the background as her thoughts swirled. She knew the clock was ticking. Each second that passed meant another step, closer to losing everything. My people, the Zarna, were once a powerful and proud species, Lyra began, her voice soft, almost nostalgic. We ruled over several systems. Our warriors were the finest in the galaxy, unmatched in battle. But war has a way of breaking even the strongest. She glanced at the human beside her. We fought for years against a superior enemy, one that was determined to wipe us out. We had no choice but to fight. And in the end, we lost everything. My husband was a general. He died on the battlefield. The human's gaze softened as she spoke, but Lyra could see the conflict in his eyes. He was beginning to understand, but he still wasn't fully committed to the weight of what she was asking. And now, Lyra continued, her voice hardening slightly, the Galactic Council has decided that my bloodline must continue. They cannot allow a warrior race to disappear so easily. The law is clear. If I do not marry within 3 days, if I do not give birth to a new heir, the Zarna will be erased from existence. I will be the last of my kind, and my people will never return. The human shook his head slowly, his jaw tightening. So, they've given you 3 days to marry, and they want you to marry a human, of all people? He paused, almost as if trying to process the absurdity of the situation. Why not a Zarna? Why does it have to be me? Lyra took a breath, the weight of the truth pressing against her chest. Only a human can break the curse of my people. We, our kind, have been bound by ancient laws. The curse of defeat can only be lifted by a bond with a human. It's been that way for centuries. If I marry a human, I will have a chance to revive the Zarna bloodline. But if I don't, we die with me. The human stopped walking, his expression unreadable as he looked at her. The crowd of travelers moved around them, oblivious to the tension that hung in the air. Lyra could feel the gravity of his silence, and she knew he was weighing his decision carefully. And what about you? He asked finally, his voice quiet yet intense. What happens to you if this doesn't work out? If I can't help you? Lyra hesitated, the answer she had kept hidden welling up inside her. I die too, alone, with no people to remember me. Her words cut through the air like a blade, sharp and cold. She didn't need to say more. He had already heard enough. The human ran a hand through his hair again, frustration clearly building in him. This is insane. I don't even know you. I don't know anything about your people, your culture, or these so-called galactic laws. And now you're asking me to marry you? You don't have a choice, Lyra said firmly, her voice taking on an edge. I didn't ask for this either, but I don't have time for hesitation or second guesses. I need you, and you need me. Whether you like it or not, we are tied together now. The human stared at her, his gaze intense as if trying to read every word she had spoken. Lyra could see the storm of emotions in his eyes, doubt, confusion, fear. But there was also something else, a flicker of something deep and primal, an instinct to protect, to survive. He sighed heavily, running his hand over his face. All right, he said finally, his voice resigned but resolute. I'll help you. But don't think for a second that I'm doing this for free. Lyra nodded, a small, grateful smile tugging at the corner of her lips. I don't expect it to be free, she said softly. I don't expect anything to come easy. But if you help me, we might both just survive this. As they walked together, Lyra couldn't help but feel that she had just stepped into a storm. A storm that would tear through everything she knew and change the course of her fate. The stakes were higher than ever, and with every passing second the danger grew. The weight of the next few days pressed down on her shoulders like a mountain. She had made a promise to the galaxy. She had made a promise to herself. And now, she had to face whatever darkness was coming with this human by her side. But what if he couldn't save her? The question lingered in the back of her mind, unanswered and impossible to ignore. The unexpected alliance. Lyra could feel the weight of the human's presence beside her as they walked deeper into the city. The sounds of the bustling spaceport faded, replaced by the sharp, cold wind of the alien city they had entered. Despite the bright neon-lit streets, there was an air of tension, an unspoken warning that hung over them. The gravity of their situation was becoming all too real. They had made an agreement. They would marry, and Lyra would fulfill her promise to the Galactic Council. But the more time she spent with this human, the more uncertain her resolve became. Was he really the one to save her people? Or was he just another pawn in a game, far bigger than either of them? Where are we going? The human asked, his voice breaking the silence. His tone was a mix of curiosity and wariness, and Lyra could feel the unease simmering beneath his words. Lyra didn't respond immediately. Instead, she led him down a narrow alley, its walls adorned with strange alien symbols. The shadows seemed to stretch longer here, as if the very air carried a sense of danger. She could sense eyes on her watching from the darkness. But they weren't the eyes of ordinary citizens. These were eyes filled with suspicion, hostility, and perhaps something more dangerous. We're meeting someone, she finally said, her voice low and steady. Someone who can help us, but I need to be sure that you're ready for this. The human's expression hardened, his brow furrowing in annoyance. I'm ready. You just don't understand what you're asking. I don't know anything about your culture, your laws. I don't even know if I can trust you, but I've made my choice and I'm sticking with it. Lyra stopped walking, turning to face him. His words hit her like a slap, but she didn't flinch. She couldn't afford to. Do you think this is easy for me? I didn't want this. My life wasn't supposed to be like this, but my people, my entire race, they're gone. And if you fail, everything dies with me. This isn't just a choice for me. It's a fight for survival. For both of us. The human's face softened, just for a moment before he let out a short, sharp laugh. No pressure, huh? Lyra could feel her heart pounding in her chest. Was he beginning to understand the gravity of their situation, or was he just going along with it out of sheer stubbornness? It was hard to tell. Before she could respond, a soft sound reached her ears, a distant hum. Her eyes darted to the shadows ahead, her hand instinctively reaching for the blade sheathed at her side. She had been trained for danger, for the unexpected. But even with all her training, she wasn't prepared for what happened next. From the shadows emerged a figure, tall, cloaked in dark robes, the shape barely discernible against the backdrop of the alley. The air seemed to grow colder as the figure stepped closer, the footsteps echoing off the stone walls. There was something almost unnatural about the way they moved, as if they weren't quite human at all. Lyra's hand tightened around the hilt of her blade, but the figure's voice stopped her. Relax, Lyra. I'm not here to hurt you. The voice was smooth, calm, and strangely familiar. Lyra's breath caught in her throat as she recognized it. It was a voice she had hoped never to hear again. Solara, she whispered, her voice barely audible. The figure pulled back her hood, revealing the face of a woman, one who looked as if she had stepped out of Lyra's darkest nightmares. Solara was a former ally, someone who had once fought by Lyra's side. But Solara's betrayal had cut deeper than any blade. She had sold Lyra out to the enemy, leaving her people to die in the chaos of war. You've been busy, Zalara said, her lips curling into a cruel smile. I see you found a human to save you. How convenient. Lyra's grip on her blade tightened, but she forced herself to remain calm. What do you want, Zalara? She asked, her voice laced with ice. Zalara's eyes flickered over to the human standing beside Lyra, sizing him up with a sharp, calculating gaze. Oh, nothing much, just making sure you understand the consequences of your actions. You're running out of time, Lyra. The Galactic Council doesn't just give second chances. If you don't deliver, it won't be just your people who suffer. The entire galaxy will know your failure. Lyra took a step forward, her posture defensive. I'm not here to be lectured by you. If you've come to threaten me again, you'll regret it. Zalara's eyes darkened, but the smile on her face never wavered. Threaten you? Oh no, Lyra. I'm not here to threaten. I'm here to offer you a reminder. You see, I know things you don't. Things that could make or break your little plan with this human. The human next to Lyra shifted, clearly uneasy. What's going on here? His voice was firm, but Lyra could hear the doubt creeping in. Zalara turned her gaze on him, her smile widening. Oh, how cute. You think you're going to marry her and make everything better, don't you? But let me ask you this, human. Do you really think you can save her? Do you really think she's worth saving? Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She could feel the tension thickening around them, the oppressive silence stretching on. The words Zalara spoke seemed to hang in the air, heavy with meaning. The human stepped closer to Lyra, his eyes burning with defiance. I don't know anything about your politics or what you did to her, he said, his voice low and steady. But I know one thing. I'm here for her, and I don't care about your threats. If she says you're the problem, then you're the problem. Lyra could see the spark of something dangerous in Zalara's eyes. A twisted satisfaction. You're so naive, she purred, taking a step closer to the human. You really think you're in control? You really think you can walk away from this without paying the price? Suddenly, a chilling thought struck Lyra. What do you know? Her voice was sharp with suspicion. What are you really after, Zalara? Zalara's smile faded, her gaze cold as she leaned in close to the human, her voice dropping to a whisper. I know you're not the only one desperate, human. I know you have your own reasons for being here, and I can help you, if you're willing to make a deal. The human flinched slightly and Lyra's heart raced. What was Zalara offering? What kind of deal was she talking about? There was no way this was going to end well. Stay away from him, Zalara, Lyra warned, her voice ice cold, her hand still gripping the blade at her side. If you think you can play games with us, you're wrong. Zalara stood up straight, her face twisting into a wicked grin. I'll be seeing you soon, Lyra. And remember, every decision has consequences. With that, she vanished into the shadows, as quickly as she had appeared, leaving Lyra and the human standing in stunned silence. The tension in the air was thick, and Lyra could feel it pressing down on her. She had no idea what game Zalara was playing, but one thing was certain. Nothing was going to be easy from here on out. What was that all about? The human asked, his voice low, clearly unsettled by the encounter. Lyra took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. That was someone from my past. Someone who wants to make sure I fail. But we can't let her win. We can't let anyone stop us. The human nodded slowly, his expression serious. I don't know what I'm getting into here, but I'll stick by you. No turning back. Lyra looked at him, a quiet sense of determination building within her. They were in this together now, whether they liked it or not. But as they continued walking into the unknown, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the storm was far from over. Zalara's shadow still loomed over them, and the countdown was running out. The countdown begins. Lyra's steps were heavy, the weight of the situation pressing down on her more with each passing second. The human walked beside her, his posture tense and alert, his every step matching hers in urgency. They both knew the stakes had just been raised, Zalara's cryptic words echoed in Lyra's mind, and the uneasy silence between her and the human was thick with unspoken questions. They had made it this far, but the true test was just beginning. The streets they walked through seemed to grow darker, the neon lights flickering overhead, casting long shadows that shifted like ghosts in the corners of her vision. The air was stifling, and it wasn't just the atmosphere, it was the impending doom that seemed to hang over them, waiting to strike. "You didn't tell me everything, did you?" The human finally broke the silence, his voice low but sharp. What was Zalara really talking about? What is she after? What game is she playing? Lyra didn't answer right away. She couldn't. There was so much she wanted to say, so much she had been holding back. Every part of her wanted to scream out the truth, to tell him just how high the stakes were. But there was something in his eyes now that stopped her. Something that made her pause, made her question whether she had the right to drag him deeper into this. Instead, she simply said, "You don't need to know everything, not yet. I'll explain when the time comes. Just trust me for now." The human was silent, but she could feel his gaze on her as if trying to decipher the walls she was putting up. "You're not the only one with questions," he muttered, though he didn't push her further. They rounded a corner, and there. It was an imposing structure that loomed ahead like a dark monolith. It was a palace of sorts, but unlike any palace Lyra had ever seen. Its jagged towers stretched toward the sky like the claws of some great, sleeping beast, its walls pulsating with an eerie energy. The air felt charged as they approached, as if the very ground beneath them was humming with anticipation. "This is it," Lyra whispered, the words slipping from her lips almost unconsciously. "This is where everything changes." The human looked at her, his brow furrowed. "What's inside?" Lyra didn't answer immediately, her eyes focused on the entrance ahead, a set of massive ancient doors guarded by statues of long-dead kings. She could feel a familiar sense of dread creeping into her chest. This wasn't just any building, it was the center of power, the heart of the Empire's laws. Inside those walls lay the truth about her people, about the choices she had made, and the price she would have to pay. "The Galactic Court is inside," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper, "where my fate will be decided, and yours too." The human didn't seem surprised by this. Instead, he studied the massive doors, his lips pressing into a thin line. "We're really doing this, aren't we?" Lyra nodded. "We don't have a choice." As they walked closer, the temperature seemed to drop, the air growing colder the nearer they got to the entrance. They stopped in front of the doors, which loomed ominously before them, their surface carved with intricate symbols and strange runes. Lyra could almost hear the whispers of her ancestors in the wind, warning her of the dangers ahead. But it was too late to turn back. "Lyra." The human's voice broke through her thoughts. "What if this isn't what you think? What if they're lying to you?" She shook her head, the thought cutting deeper than she expected. "I've seen the signs. I know what's at stake. You have to trust me." The human's hand hesitated on the door, as if weighing something. Then with a sharp breath he pushed it open. The moment they stepped inside, the temperature seemed to drop even further, a chilling presence seeping into their bones. The air smelled faintly of incense and old stone, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the vast hall. Above them, the ceiling was high, too high, and its intricate carvings seemed to pulse with an eerie light. The entire room was bathed in a soft, unnatural glow, the walls lined with statues that seemed to watch their every move. At the far end of the hall stood a raised platform, upon which sat a large oval-shaped chair, its design both regal and alien. Behind the chair was a giant screen, flickering with images of planets, ships, and ancient symbols. Lyra's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the symbols. Those were the ancient markings of the Galactic Council, the very beings who held the power to destroy everything she had left. "This is it," Lyra whispered, the words barely escaping her throat. The human moved closer to her, his hand brushing against hers, an instinctive gesture of comfort. "Lyra, you've got this. Just tell me what to do and I'll help." But before she could respond, a low, mechanical voice rang out, vibrating the very walls. Lyra of the Fallen Clan, you stand before the Galactic Court. Your fate is sealed." Voice echoed through the chamber, and a sudden sense of dread washed over them both. Lyra froze, her blood turning cold. She had heard this before in the stories of her people. The voice of the court, the voice of the end. "Your trial has begun," the voice continued, the coldness in its tone sending a shiver down Lyra's spine. "You are accused of betrayal, of failing to protect your people, and now you will face judgment. You have 3 days to prove your worth. If you fail, the consequences will be dire." Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the weight of the human's gaze on her, his confusion mingling with fear. 3 days? The human repeated, his voice laced with disbelief. "What are they talking about?" Lyra turned to him, her face grim. "It's a challenge. If I don't succeed, they'll strip me of everything. And if they do that, we're both dead." The human's eyes widened, but before he could speak, the chamber doors slammed shut behind them, the sound vibrating through the walls like a thunderclap. The trial had begun, and with it, the countdown to their doom had started. The trial of shadows. The doors slammed shut behind them with a deafening thud, sealing off any escape. The room grew colder, its oppressive silence pressing down on them like a heavy weight. Lyra's heart raced, her chest tight with fear. The countdown had begun, and every second felt like it could be their last. The human stood beside her, his face grim, his eyes scanning the towering figures around the room. But there was no movement, no sign of life. "Lyra," the human whispered, his voice low and urgent. "What's happening? What are they going to do? To us?" Lyra didn't answer right away. Her thoughts were too tangled, too clouded by the terror of the situation. She could feel the pressure building, each breath she took echoing in her mind. The Galactic Court was ruthless, and once they set their eyes on you, there was no escaping their judgment. A distant hum filled the air, vibrating the very foundation of the room. Then, without warning, the floor beneath them shifted, the ground moving like a living entity. The walls stretched and twisted, morphing into jagged shapes, as if the room itself was alive and watching them. Lyra's breath caught in her throat as the space around them transformed, becoming an arena unlike any she had seen before. The air crackled with energy, the atmosphere thick with an unnatural weight. The platform where they stood rose higher, lifting them into a grand, circular arena surrounded by shadows. The only light came from the floating orbs above them, casting eerie, shifting reflections across the dark stone walls. The human's gaze shifted rapidly as he took in the surroundings, his body tense, clearly trying to make sense of what was happening. "This isn't a trial," Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible. "This is a game, a test of survival." The human looked at her, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Survival? What are you talking about?" Lyra didn't have time to explain. The lights above them flickered, and a booming voice echoed from nowhere, its cold tone sending shivers down their spines. "Welcome, Lyra of the Fallen Clan, and your chosen ally. You are here to prove your worth before the Galactic Court. To survive, you must overcome the trials of shadows, challenges designed to test your resolve, your courage, and your loyalty. Fail, and both of you will be lost forever." The words seemed to hang in the air like an impending storm. Lyra's mind raced. The trials of shadows were legendary, a test few ever survived. Each trial was different, each one designed to push you to the brink of madness. And worse, no one knew exactly what they would face. The court never explained. It was a twisted game to them, a way to entertain themselves at the expense of those unlucky enough to be caught in their web. Before she could say anything, the ground trembled beneath them. A deep, guttural growl echoed through the arena, and a shadowy figure appeared at the far end, emerging from the darkness. It was a beast, a terrifying, monstrous creature with glowing red eyes and massive, clawed limbs. Its dark form shimmered in and out of existence, as if it were made from the very shadows themselves. "What is that?" the human whispered, his voice tinged with fear. It's, it's not real, right? Lyra didn't answer. She couldn't. The creature was very real, and it was coming toward them. The air around it warped, rippling like water, as if reality itself bent under its presence. She could feel the intensity of its gaze on them, as if it were studying them, deciding when to strike. Without warning, the beast lunged. Its claws slashed through the air, aiming directly at the human. Lyra reacted instinctively, pushing him aside with all her strength, just as the claws tore through the space where he had stood. The force of the attack sent both of them tumbling to the ground, but Lyra quickly regained her footing, her heart pounding in her chest. The beast was on them again, its movements swift and predatory. The human scrambled to his feet, his hand instinctively reaching for something, anything to defend himself. Lyra moved faster than she thought possible, her eyes narrowed in determination. She could see the weakness in the beast's attack pattern, a slight hesitation before each. "Strike, it was enough to give her a chance. Get behind me," she shouted to the human. But before the human could react, Lyra leaped forward, meeting the beast head-on. The clash was explosive, a thunderous sound echoing through the arena as her weapons met the creature's claws. But it wasn't just strength that mattered here. It was strategy. She had to outwit the beast, not just fight it. The creature snarled, its glowing eyes narrowing in anger, but Lyra had already begun to circle around it, looking for an opening. She knew the court would be watching, judging every move, and this trial, this creature, was only the beginning. As she fought, her mind raced. If she couldn't defeat this beast, if she couldn't prove herself strong enough, the consequences would be devastating. Not just for her, but for the human as well. She wasn't just fighting for her own life. She was fighting for his. And that made her even more determined. The creature roared again, slamming its massive tail against the ground in a vicious arc. The ground cracked beneath them, sending a wave of shock through the arena. Lyra barely managed to dodge, but she could feel the heat from the attack against her skin. This was no ordinary beast. It was a manifestation of the court's power, a creature born of darkness and shadow. With every attack, the creature grew more aggressive, its form shifting and warping. But Lyra could see it, the faintest glow under its chest, a weak spot. If she could just get close enough. With a burst of speed, she lunged forward, her blade slicing through the air. The creature howled in pain as the blade struck true, its glowing chest flickering with an intense light. But the victory was short-lived. The beast's body shimmered and reformed, its wounds healing almost instantly. "No!" Lyra screamed in frustration. "This isn't real. It can't be." But the court's voice rang out once more, cutting through the confusion. "The trials of shadows are as real as your will to survive, Lyra of the Fallen Clan. Fail, and you will vanish into nothingness. Succeed, and you will prove your worth." The creature lunged again, but this time Lyra was ready. She moved with precision, striking at the glowing weak spot once more. The air around her seemed to crack with energy as the beast let out one final agonized roar, and then, with a sudden flash of light, it disintegrated into nothingness, leaving only the lingering scent of burnt ozone in the air. The arena fell silent, and Lyra stood panting, her body covered in sweat, her heart still racing. The human stood beside her, his eyes wide in shock. "Is it over?" he asked, his voice shaking. Lyra didn't answer immediately. The trial wasn't over. Not yet. And the real challenge was only just beginning. The final judgment. The arena was silent, the echoes of the battle with the creature still reverberating through the air. Lyra stood motionless, her chest rising and falling with each labored breath, her heart still pounding from the intense fight. Her eyes remained locked on the empty space where the beast had been just moments ago. It had vanished, disintegrated into the shadows. But she knew this was only one part of the trial. The true test had yet to come. Beside her, the human was, also catching his breath, his eyes darting around the arena, his expression filled with uncertainty and confusion. He had seen the impossible today, monstrous beasts shifting realities, and an arena designed to break the spirit. But now there was an unnatural stillness, as if the very air had frozen in anticipation of what would come next. And then, the voice came, cold, detached, and all-knowing. Lyra of the Fallen Clan, you have survived the first trial of shadows. But your journey is far from over. To prove your worth, you must face your greatest challenge, the final judgment. The voice seemed to come from all directions, vibrating the very walls of the arena. Lyra's spine stiffened, her heart skipping a beat. The final judgment. The words rang through her mind like a death sentence. And what does that mean? The human muttered under his breath, his eyes searching the shadows for any sign of danger. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She couldn't. The truth was, she didn't know what this final judgment would entail. She had heard stories of it, the final trial that decided the fate of those who dared to challenge the Galactic Court. But the specifics were always kept hidden, shrouded in mystery and fear. The ground beneath them rumbled again, and suddenly, the center of the arena was filled with a brilliant, blinding light. Lyra squinted, raising her arm to shield her eyes. The light was so intense it was as though the very stars had been summoned into the arena. Then in the midst of the light a figure appeared, a woman, tall and regal, her presence commanding and unyielding. She was dressed in flowing robes of silver and gold, her hair cascading like a waterfall of light. Her eyes, however, were the most striking feature, cold, unblinking, and infinite, as if they had seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations. The figure stepped forward, her footsteps soundless, her gaze fixed on Lyra. Her expression was unreadable, but there was something in the air that made it clear. She was not here to offer mercy. "You have proven your strength," the figure said, her voice like a soft yet powerful breeze. "But strength is not enough to earn your survival. You must prove your heart." Lyra's throat tightened. "What do you mean? What is this final judgment?" The figure did not answer immediately. Instead, she raised her hand and a series of glowing symbols appeared in the air before them, swirling like cosmic constellations. Lyra's eyes widened as she recognized the symbols. They were ancient, powerful, and familiar. "This is your trial, Lyra of the Fallen Clan," the figure continued. "You must choose. You must choose between your past and your future. You must choose between loyalty to your people and the life of this human. The choice will determine whether you live or die." Lyra felt the weight of the words settle on her chest, suffocating her. The past and the future, her people, her clan, her legacy, and the human standing beside her, the one she had grown to trust. The weight of the choice was unbearable. One wrong decision, and it could mean the end of everything she had fought for, the end of the human who had risked everything to stand by her. The figure's voice sliced through her thoughts, cold and final. "Choose wisely, for the consequences will be eternal." Lyra's mind raced, her thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and fear. She had always believed her loyalty lay with her people, her clan, her family, her legacy. But this human, this stranger, who had become more than just an ally, was in danger because of her. If she chose to betray him to save herself, would she still be worthy of living? Could she live with herself if she allowed him to die? "No," Lyra whispered, shaking her head. "I won't sacrifice him. I won't choose my people over him. I won't betray him." The figure raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. "You would risk your life for him? After everything?" Lyra nodded, her resolve strengthening with each passing second. "Yes. He has risked everything for me. I owe him my life. I will not abandon him now." The figure's eyes seemed to soften just for a moment, before her expression hardened again. "Very well." A flicker of light passed through the air, and suddenly, the human was engulfed in a wave of energy. Lyra gasped, her heart leaping into her throat as she rushed forward to grab him, but the energy pushed her back, sending her tumbling to the ground. The human was suspended in midair, his body surrounded by a shimmering aura. His eyes were wide with fear, his hands reaching out for Lyra. "Lyra!" he shouted, his voice frantic. "What's happening?" The figure's voice rang out again, this time filled with a strange mix of approval and sorrow. You have made your choice, Lyra of the Fallen Clan. You have chosen the human, but remember, this choice comes with a price. Your fate is now sealed. If the human dies, so do you. Lyra's chest tightened with terror. No, you can't do this. You can't take him. The human looked at her, his face filled with both fear and determination. It's okay, Lyra. I'll be fine. We'll make it through this, together. But Lyra could barely hear him. The figure had raised her hand again, and the human's form began to flicker and fade, as though he were being pulled into another dimension. What have you done? Lyra screamed, her voice cracking with panic. The figure's gaze softened just a fraction. You will not lose him. Not yet. But you must face your past, Lyra. Your final test is within you. Until you overcome it, your fate and the fate of the human will remain uncertain. The arena began to darken, and the human's form disappeared from view. Lyra could feel her heart breaking. Was this the price of her choice? Would she truly lose him, even after everything? And in the depths of the darkness, Lyra realized that the final judgment wasn't just about a choice between two paths. It was a test of everything she was, everything she had ever believed in. Her true trial had only just begun.